I'm Alessandro.
And I'm Gazem. Before we start, we would like everyone to know that we're both in New York, United States. It is 6 a.m. here. That is just a warning to tell you the state that we're both in right now.
Well, we both appreciate being here very much. I am an Italian American student, was born and raised in Italy, but I'm a dual citizen. I then moved to New York to study sports management, and I graduated in May of last year. I'm currently employed at League Apps, a software company for youth sports registration based in New York City.
And I'm an international student from Turkey. So I studied at New York University on a F1 visa. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology. And currently, I'm a human service specialist at Super Purposes and a psychoeducation tutor for a nonprofit organization.
So we just wanted to start by talking about, deciding to go abroad, deciding to go, cross ocean to the United States. I think right after high school is an important choice. So, for me, obviously, it was, I had an American background, I had a dual citizenship, and that made things very easy bureaucratically and, just from a family standpoint as well. But generally speaking, I just thought there was a lot that the United States and there was a lot that New York specifically could give me as a city and as a school. And I think just coming from Europe and having been born and raised in Italy, I just felt that New York was a nice starting point in the United States just because of its international nature and it's a cultural melting pot, and I felt I would blend in quicker than in other parts of the United States. And in hindsight, I don't know that that was necessarily the case, just because it's it is a international city and a cultural melting pot, but it's also a very big city with many people, and especially when you're in an urban campus like NYU, it's not that easy to to create social groups and to find your space. And so my advice when you're making these decisions is like consider all of these aspects. Don't just consider the school or the school's ranking. Consider the city, consider the program, consider whether you already know people there. Gizem and I knew we were both going to NYU, and we already had a friendship that dated back from high school. So these are the kind of things I think you should think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an international student and I didn't really want to go study in my own home country. So I was going to go through a visa process for any college that I wanted to attend and got into anyway. So the reason that I chose to go to the US was mostly because of the environmental aspects that such as like not having to drive a car to get around in New York. It was a lot easier than the other programs that I got into. And in addition, the that I got into in New York was a different psychology program than the other ones. And it was a little bit more practical in a sense rather than just philosophical or thoughts. So I chose that one based on the program as well as the advantages that the city that I was going to offered me. And I don't have any additional advice to give other than the ones Alessandro already did. In terms of transitioning to the university life, it wasn't going to a different country wasn't that different for me since I had already been living in different countries since I was 7 years old. The only difference was that I was going at a different level of education, and what's good about the IB is that it really does actually prepare you for the workload that you're going to be getting at university. It's honestly around the same in terms of the readings and the amount of assignments that you're going to be getting in a short amount of time. The biggest challenge of New York is that despite it being a large city with a lot of people, it's really easy to feel alone. And you're not always going to like be making friendships that you want that quickly, or at least you won't. This differs from person to person, but that's one aspect to consider because it's really easy to feel lonely in New York. And it's important to know that it's important to also know that like you need to be safe. There are a lot of things that occur in subways on the streets. It's important to be aware of your surroundings when you're in New York as well. Doesn't matter what time of day it is. It's always important just be aware of what's happening around you and act accordingly. So like you don't want to go down like alleyways just because it's like a shortcut or something. If you don't feel comfortable, you just take the longer way. That's one of the things that people forget when they're in New York, that they feel safe because there's a lot of people, but that's not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that sort of, and I think is a really good point about, sort of linked to what I was saying about, possibility of feeling lonely, and it's a big city. And, I always like to think about it when I think back. To me, it took about a year to feel, fully integrated, fully, unlonely, if that's a word. But, I feel like it was the end of my freshman year that I really felt like, hey, like I know where I am. I know why I'm here. I feel good about it. I feel good about the places I know, the routines I'm having, the things I'm doing. And so, but it's fine. It's fine because it's like it's not the kind of thing that should scare you. It just happens. Like moving so far away for college, especially if I had never moved. I'd been born and raised for 19 years in the same place. It's a big decision. So that you shouldn't let that scare you. It's just big decisions come with big sort of consequences. And but you get out of it everything you possibly can after that. You just have to be willing to go through that you know adaptation phase. And maybe for you it's not going to be a year, maybe for you it's going to be 6 months. I mean, I think it depends on personality as well. But you know I think the importance of a support system, and finding ways to really cope with it. And I think your classes are very important. Like Gizem said, the IB prepares you very well. So I don't think, I mean, in my experience, I wasn't like really struggling to keep up with the academic workload. And so that definitely gave a chance to use classes to meet people. It's the easy way to meet people because you're already in a class. You already know you have some sort of interest versus trying to find people in other places in such a big city. So that's an easy way to start, and to create a support system, and to find resources within your university or your campus. And whether it's clubs, or I was playing varsity tennis, or intramurals. I think that can all contribute to creating a healthy support system.
Yeah, and two other things to consider, especially when you're in New York, is money is one of them in terms of finance. New York is an expensive city, so in terms of like also choosing like where to go, remember that some cities will be more expensive than others. Just to give you an example, a good cup of coffee will be like $5, honestly. It's ridiculously expensive, and if you still want a cup of coffee, you can get like a $2 one, sure, but it's just not going to be as good. So like considering fine expenses is also really important. And in New York, it's honestly very surprising how much things cost. So That's another thing to take into consideration. And another thing is campus. New York doesn't have a walls around us. It's out in the open. There are other schools that won't be like that, and they will actually provide you with a more safe environment, but New York isn't. So you still need to also be careful when you're on campus because things can happen on campus, like um, robberies, or you just need to be aware.
So yeah, I mean, I think we've already touched on some of this. You know, how to make the most of your university experience is like, you know, I said, you know, go beyond the classroom. It's not just to create a support system, but you know, to actually be involved. You know, there's a lot that you can get. You know, and because it's a big decision, because it's such a big decision, and you know, you might have to go through a coping and adaptation phase. Like, you want to make sure you get everything you can after. And so, you know, you want to get involved with activities, you know, volunteering, you know, try to get some work experience, whether it's in your field of study, or, you know, even just like in retail, or, you know, just somewhere in the city. You know, there are amazing, you know, leadership opportunities and internships you can get that, you know, NYU or the university you choose to go to can, you know, help you get. And they're just important because I think, you know, when you're going to college, you're not just, you know, trying to build a degree. And this is like both from like a resume standpoint and a personal standpoint. You know, you want to come out that, you know, you're a different person. You have more to show for it in on many levels. You don't just come out with a degree, and I think that's important for an employer who's interviewing you, as much as it is just for yourself to be able to say like, "Hey, like I really got the most out of it. It was, you know, worth my money." You know, school in the United States is not cheap, so yeah, and New York is not cheap, like Ism was saying, and it was also worth your time and, you know, the energy you put into it. And, you know, both Gizem and I had to attend, you know, at least part of, you know, school during the pandemic. And, you know, that wasn't easy, shifting to a fully, you know, remote environment. I'm sure you guys have had to do it with high school, and, you know, you're aware of, you know, the challenges that involves. And but because of that, you know, there was a, you know, part of our time at university where we weren't able to, you know, get involved with, you know, some of this. You know, social life became much more difficult. You know, getting work, you know, getting a job, you know, the market was, you know, stuck for a long time, right? You know, a lot of companies were on hiring freeze, but, you know, we're past that. And I think, you know, you guys are, you know, are going in at a very exciting time. And, you know, you should definitely take advantage of all of this because, you know, it's coming to life more than before, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah, like I agree. Like just basically putting emphasis on the fact that you're not getting a degree. You're not only going to get a degree, and that's not what people are going to be looking for when you're applying to jobs. Kind of like how you were doing all you can to show that in your transcripts or like in your letters of um, when you were writing letters to universities that like you're doing different things other than just like focusing on your academics. You're doing the same thing for when you're going to be applying to jobs. You want to fill your resume with different skills that will set you that will separate you from the other candidates. You want to show them that there are different sides of you and that you've worked in different industries. So branching out will not only help you with like showing that you do different things and increasing like not just your professional skills but your personal growth as well, but also allow you to network in different areas. So don't be afraid to just branch out and don't just focus on the industry that you want to go into. Focus on different industries as well. In terms of transition, we transitioned during the time that where COVID was a little bit more of a problem, and it's still having an impact. For example, the biggest impact that it has for me is the OPT that I'm on. OPT is basically what you apply for if you're an international student in the US. It allows you to stay in the US for a year and get a job. Basically, you also need to get a job that is in your field, so in your major. And once you do get a job, you need to, and while you're on the OPT, you need to tell them that how the job that you have relates to your field, and they need to approve it. If they don't approve it, you need to leave that job. And you can only, while you're on the OPT, you can only be unemployed for 90 days. Before the pandemic, the rules of this visa or status used to be a little bit more strict, but now, due to the pandemic, they, for example, required you to work more than 20 hours per week, but now they don't have that kind of requirement. Any kind of hour that you get, you can work on. So the pandemic kind of helped make that a little more lenient, but that can change anytime. So keeping up with, like, for an international student at least, keeping up with these kinds of changes, and while you're still in school, knowing, like, the work permits that you can apply to and how they will work, and preparing for those is really important. Um, that way, because some of your employers might also not want people with OPT. That's also important to know. Um, so you need to uh, focus your search in a way that will give you the best possible options.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add maybe a couple of things because I want us to get to some Q&A, but I think it was really important for Gizem to shed light on, sort of some of the processes in the United States. I mean, I didn't have to go through them because, again, I was a dual citizen, so I was able to apply as such. But, this is not an easy country to navigate, when you're an international student and, when you're transitioning out of college. And I mean, I think the one thing I will say, and if you're lucky enough that you can work and live here, or find a way to do that, after an OPT or in the future, is like, the OPT unfortunately sort of forces you to work in your field of study for a year after college, like Gizem was saying. But we live in a world nowadays where, you know you don't have to, and you most likely are not going to work in your field of study for the next 40 years of your career, unless, of course, you decide to become a doctor or an engineer, or you have a very specialized degree. But there are a lot of degrees, and sports management is one of them. That's sort of what I chose to do, where you know I see people, especially starting, entering the professional world. I look around, and on my team at League Apps, I work with other 9 people, and none of them have a sports management degree. Someone has an English literature degree, someone has a sociology degree, someone has a chemistry degree. And so that's just to say, the world is changing, and employer expectations are changing, and there is a lot more generalization going on, and career changes are much easier. And employers just kind of want to see that you're willing to learn, you're willing to outwork others, you're willing to build those skills and learn on the job. So don't think that, again, unless you know exactly what you want to do, and you want to go very specific, and that that's what you want to do for life. But even there, you don't, the decision you're making now is not going to, this myth that it's going to, like, decide your life for the next 50 years is just not true. And again, and it's the same for college. Like, you're not going to, like, 90% of what you learn in college is not going to enter your long-term memory. I mean, the things you sit exams on. I mean, it's a lot. It's not the content so much. It's like, the skills you develop in critical thinking and figuring things out and working on group projects with other people. So, really try to take advantage, not of just, memorizing, but, like Gizem said, networking. Those are the kind of things you want to be focusing on, I think, in your university journey.
Yeah, especially networking, because with a really competitive market that's going on right now, especially in New York, because there's a lot of people that are trying to apply for a lot of jobs. It's a very competitive market. So that's another thing to consider um, when you're in the city that you're in. How is the job market there? Is it competitive? Because New York is. And right now, not only for New York, but most places, networking, getting referrals from somebody within the company is the biggest, uh, like, the best chance that you have at getting a job for sure. You can get it through, getting interviews and like by your merit. That's not to say you can't, but a referral from an inside source goes a long way, and makes it just a little bit more sure that you will get that job.
And by the way, don't just think like, oh, if I have a friend of a friend of a friend, or like a parent of a friend of a friend, like you can build those connections from
Yeah.
scratch. Like LinkedIn is a thing, and you should definitely get involved with it. And you can send cold messages and cold emails to people you don't have connections with. I mean, that's actually I think how most people do it. And I think if you develop that skill, that's going to be a major asset for you entering professional life. Um, but yeah, we just wanted to thank you and take any Q&A in the next last 45 minutes.
Oops.
If you wanna, if you have any questions, write them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer or group them and sort of give a general answer to them. Either way, we'll stay on for the next 4 minutes. So if no questions come in, then it means we were very clear, hopefully, and we wish you luck. And then if any questions come in the next 3 or 4 minutes, we'll do the best to answer.
Yeah, and if everything that we said so far has just been like a bunch of information that seems to be telling you that you need to always be active and doing a lot of work, honestly, yeah, it is. But it's also important to remember that, like, um, that's how your high school went too, but you still managed to like balance out your life. It's just all about balance. So as long as you can get that balance, like as long as you're putting as much effort into your professional career during the day as well as your social life or your academic life, you will be fine. It's just a little amount of time that you spend during the day that will go a long way. You don't have to spend like hours. That's not what we're saying. Just remember to always like focus on each aspect of your life a little by little.
So I saw a question come in. Have you felt homesick, and how do you deal with it? I definitely have. Speaking for myself, and I think two things. First one is keep busy. Really keeping busy and being active, like Gizem was saying, is not just a way to come out, feeling accomplished and, with a, consistent resume and, with a lot of things on it, but it's also a way to forget about those feelings of, homesickness. If you're constantly doing things, trust me, you won't have that much time to, on your hands to be able to, think and actually assess those feelings. And the other thing I want to do is, obviously, I'm not saying you shouldn't assess them and cope with them. You definitely should. We live in an environment where technology is easy and accessible. I mean, you can FaceTime and Skype and video chat and keep very much in touch. I think with your family and with home on a daily basis. And I think you want to do that. You want to definitely do that.
Um, there's another question that asks if you get better job opportunities having studied in the US compared to a student who graduated in Europe. Um, I'm honestly going to say no. If, like, it doesn't really matter. Um, Depends on where you want to apply. Did you graduate in Europe and you want to apply to a company in the US? Or, like, are you, like, just, if that is the question, I don't think it does matter. As long as you're able to sell yourself, and you're as long as you're able to sell yourself and the skills that you have and how you will contribute to the company and why you're an asset to them, it won't matter. Um, Okay, thank you for clarifying. It won't matter whether or not you graduated a U.S. university. There are well-known European universities as well that they recognize here. So that's not going to be an issue. It's all about how you actually sell yourself to the company that you're applying to.
And that's why we're saying, building a
Yeah.
profile with so many things in it, not just your college degree, is so important, because ultimately that's what you're bringing to a job interview, not just your college degree, but you know everything
Yeah,
else.
like if there's a company that you want to work for, you can be in a European university. If there's a company that you want to work for in the US and you actually do want to work for them while you're in university, just start a chat with them on LinkedIn, like somebody who's there at the job that you want. Let them know that you're interested and like what you can do and like what you're doing. That's how you get in with companies right now. You reach out. It's awkward. It seems random, but it isn't because a lot of people do it. So it's all about taking initiative and being proactive.
Any other last questions?
And in terms of homesickness in New York, there are so many opportunities. In like food wise, for example, you don't feel homesick. You just get upset with the fact that you can get this for so much cheaper when you're at home.
But you can get the food. I mean,
Yeah, I just choose not to spend
yeah.
that much insane money.
All right. I think that might be it. Um, Thank you, everyone, for attending. We hope again it wasn't too much information, in 25 minutes. Um, do you feel getting a job or getting a degree was worth it in finding a job?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm gonna try not to make a very sort of practical materialistic, to not give a practical materialistic answer, but I'm going to. Um, a lot of people have degrees these days. I mean, statistically speaking, there are, compared to, you know, the 2000s or 90s, a lot more people are getting degrees. A lot more people are pursuing higher education to higher levels, master's degrees, PhDs, and, higher education systems are becoming more inventive and creative to give, opportunity to people who wouldn't, and make it slightly more accessible, though we're not quite there yet. And all of this is to say, you know, most likely when you're looking for a job, you'll be competing against people who have a college degree, and sometimes you'll be competing with people who have a master's degree or a PhD.
And some
um,
jobs will actually require you to have a master's degree. They will
yeah.
specify that in their qualifications.
So, but I don't want it just to be a like materialistic answer. I do want to say that, again, there's a lot that you can learn, again, not just by memorizing content of exams, but skill sets, networking, activities and volunteering and internships, and all of that, I think, makes it worth it.
Yeah. Just gonna go to the anxiety question. If you have a experience with anxiety in the process of applying to universities, yes, I have. It is a very stressful process in a sense that it seems like your whole life will be defined by the letter that you write to them, and one word matters a lot. At least that's how I felt. I don't know about Alessandro. I'm talking about myself. Um, Honestly, you overcome it by, for me at least, you just kind of accept that this anxiety that you're feeling is normal and everybody else goes through it. Everybody else is applying. And in the end of the day, like it's going to work out. There is no huge like crazy reason that a school will not accept you unless you don't meet their requirements. That's the only reason. As long as you work hard and like you I don't work hard. You work towards meeting their requirements. You work because you want to make this happen. It's going to be fine. And as long as you're sure about that, um, there's no reason to be anxious. I mean, there is, but um, as long as there's a good support system around you as well, people who like support you through this process, you're going to be okay.
And look, I mean, it's good practice. I mean,
Yeah,
applying for
because
university
job interviews
is
and job
much like, yep,
yeah,
it's
it's the
much,
same.
it's much like applying for the job for a job. I mean, you're going to be anxious. Um, again, you know, there are feelings that you want to try to avoid, but you also want to try to learn how to coexist with. And that kind of anxiety is one of them. So, there's no reason not to try a long shot, and, even maybe try university that you don't have, 100 percent of requirements for. On the other hand, you should always have a backup plan. Always, um, have a school on your list that's a little more on your reach. And it's the same when you're applying for jobs, right? It's a long shot. Why not? But you should definitely also mainly be applying for jobs that you do have the requirements to satisfy. So
Yeah, applying to jobs is also a little bit more stressful because like
right.
you get rejections a lot quicker and you will get them more often and it will be really just like it will make you really sad and like you will lose confidence, but it's all about you just have to keep going because rejections will come, but there would also be moments where they actually some say yeah we would like to interview you, so you just got to keep moving forward.
So yeah, but I'd say you can
I don't
overcome it.
remember my IB score. I am very sorry.
My IB score was 38. For those who are asking.
Maybe mine wasn't as good. That's why I don't remember it. But I still got into uni, so that's okay. Don't worry, guys. You don't need like a 41 to get into university.
um, Last two questions. I'll try to give a sort of you know answer together. How hard is it to make friendships in college, and would you recommend NYU? Of course, this one's very personal. Um, I mean, how hard is it to make friendships in college is to me, it's a very subjective question because I always like to say it depends on your personality type. I mean, it depends on, I mean, for sure, this is not to say like that, the context you're in is not affecting, the difficulty or accessibility of making friendships. But I mean, you know, I'm slightly an introvert. Don't have an issue spending a little more time by myself, maybe than someone else. And so maybe, I won't, feel the need unless sort of the opportunity presents itself. There are other people who do feel that need, and that's why on day one they sign up for every single club and activity possible, and they're like buzzing around orientation, just trying to generate conversations out of nowhere, which is totally fine. I mean, I think if you really want to make them, I mean, if you feel like you need them, and you don't just want to wait for the moment to come where they'll come to you, because they will. Again, it will just take a little longer. I mean, there are plenty of opportunities. I wouldn't say it's hard per se. And, I think that was the case at NYU. I mean, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's an excellent school in a great city. A lot of things to bear in mind, which is the whole point of this session. But, I think if you go in with an open mind and cognizant of all of these aspects, which we hope you are as a result of this, I think you'll get an amazing experience. And you'll come out of it, entering the professional world in New York City, which is a place like no other, in my very personal opinion. Um, and I just had amazing professors, many of whom I have a friendship relationship with now, and um, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, so I'll be quick. Friendships wise, it's not about hard. It's just It really depends on your personality. I'm also more of an introvert. I find it difficult to talk to people, but I also hate like small talk. I can't stand it. I need something that's a little bit more like where I'm at a good point with somebody where I can like actually like ask random questions that are like deep. I like those conversations. So for me, that's why it was kind of hard to make like friends because you have to start with small talk, and I just hate that so much. Um, Other than that, like Alessandro said, like there's so many options for you to like meet people. Just don't get discouraged. Like you will find someone who's on the same wavelength as you. Like it'll happen. Just takes time to form friendships. In terms of NYU, yeah, it is a good school. It's not like the best school there is. It has its own issues, obviously, as all universities do. You're not gonna like all classes or professors. You're gonna like some of them, obviously, because they have some awesome professors. And honestly, the biggest thing about NYU is actually, are you comfortable being in New York City? It's a giant city. It's expensive. There's tons of different people in the city with different personalities. It's just a very fast paced environment. Are you going to be happy there? That is another like, do you like the school? Do you like your program? Do you like the city that you're going to be living in for the next 4 years? Because that's really important. If you're not somebody who likes fast paced environments where people can be kind of rude, but people just kind of mind their own business in New York. So, like take that into consideration. Like, can you live in this city?
Try to squeeze in 30 seconds. One last quick question. How easy it is to balance social and academic life? Um,
It can be
I,
easy. It
it's,
depends on the
yeah,
day.
I mean, you guys, like, you have much more in control than you think when you're
Yeah.
going in. I mean, you choose how to approach this. You can do very well in school, and balance your social life. Like, Gizem and I are proof of that, and plenty of other people I think we
Oh, yeah.
know. So, yeah, so but you have to choose. You control it, and you have to um, take it into your own hands, and you know force it upon yourself to create a schedule, to manage your time properly, to prepare papers in advance. I mean, not to say, I mean, you're not going to procrastinate. Everybody procrastinates, okay? But, create that balance, okay? Don't just, leave it up to chance. If you leave it up to chance, then, it's not going to be that easy. But, if you take it into your own hands and you plan in advance and you know, make a promise to yourself that you're going to, then it's very doable.
I mean, what are you currently doing in IB? You're just kind of going to be doing that, but without your parents, and where you're in a more you know, like individualistic environment. That's honestly the truth. No one's going to be watching you. No one's going to be telling you what to do. You need to be in charge of it. So, like, if your friends tell you to go out and you have something due like the next day, you can choose to go out. I've done it. I just have to stay up the whole night to finish it. So, those are the kind of choices you want to make. It's not hard. It just happens. Um, Whatever works for you, just do it. Just make sure that you try and form some sort of balance.
Is there anything you missed about not being a traditional walled campus? I mean,
I don't think so. I felt free. I liked it.
yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
different. I mean, obviously, it's a little different. I mean, you make a choice based on, again, personality type and the knowledge and awareness that you're not going to be in a traditional walled campus. But I don't think there's anything I missed per se. I missed out on, or that I regret for not having been in a traditional walled campus.
Yeah, I went to Columbia. You can just kind of go into Columbia. So I don't really know how it's a walled campus. You can literally go into Columbia. I did. I like
I mean,
sat on the
maybe
stairs.
you go
I
to
was
other
like, oh,
schools.
this is not that different. It's just everything around, like the classes and like the buildings you're going to be going to, they're just all surrounded by walls. That's the difference.
And by the way, I mean, that's my personal opinion, but if you go to a traditional walled campus, I mean, chances are you're going to spend most of your days there and going to be
Yeah.
meeting the same people. I mean, not to say, I mean, these universities have like thousands of students and professors. So, hey, it's not the same people. It's not like you got 20 people. But, you could be walking around Washington Square Park in New York City and, meet someone who is not affiliated with the university. I mean, much more easily than, you would in a traditional wall campus. You actually have to go out of the campus and have a reason to be doing it. Whereas in New York City, it's just like you're walking from class to the next, and just be meeting someone who's there for a different reason, or seeing people going to work.
Yeah, I think it's good to mention that this whole walled campus thing, even if there are walls for like Columbia or something, it still doesn't necessarily work because you're like in the center of the city. You're not like normally most walled campuses are like away from the city where they're located. They're going to be kind of like in the suburbs a little bit more, kind of far away from it. So you have to take like a bus, or you have to like take a car to get to the actual city. New York is very different. You're literally in the city, so there's no like wall necessarily. You can literally just get out anytime you want. I think that's good to mention. It's a specific case. There probably are other universities like that, but the only one I know of is like universities in New York. This is how it is. You're in the city. There is no way for you not to be going into the city, even if it is a walled campus. You're just gonna have to get out. But yeah.
Okay, then I think that's.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for your questions. We appreciate them, and it was a pleasure being here. And I think
we're sorry that they didn't have any concrete answers, because some of them are very personalized, and like it just, all we can tell you is you will figure it out. You will make mistakes. It will happen. But
it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
So yeah.
That's all we got. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a great rest of your day.